I'm William Melhado, reporter with the Texas Tribune. Thank you all for joining us in person and online for this series of conversations about public defense in Texas. This next session here is going to focus on the hurdles to rural defense. And I want to thank our partners here for this event, the Texas Indigent Defense Commission. Before we begin, I'd also like to take a special moment to thank our Texas Tribune members joining us in person and online today. We're really grateful for your support. If you value events like this and you're not a member yet, please consider supporting the Tribune. Head to texastribune.org/donate. And some housekeeping notes here. We have 45 minutes for this conversation. We're going to need every minute of it because we have four wonderful panelists here. And so if you will do us a favor, please silence your cell phones. And if you want to tweet from this event, please use the hashtag TTEvents. So I'd like to start by introducing our panelists here. First, we have First, we have James McDermott, a chief public defense attorney in Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Program, which covers 5 counties out in West Texas, obviously. James has been working in rural defense for 16 years, and he's been with that public defense office for 5.5 years. Next, we have David Ortiz, who is a longtime private defense attorney based in Del Rio. David has previously represented immigrant defendants and has worked defending indigent clients in rural Texas for 28 years. Next, we have Judge Ben Zeller, who has served as the county judge for Victoria County since 2014. Judge Zeller worked in the financial sector for several years before being elected and serving as county judge. And then finally, we have Lakeisha Walton, who works as a defense attorney for Potter and Armstrong Public Defender Office, which opened this past summer, serving indigent defense clients in the Panhandle. And Lakeisha previously worked as a prosecutor before switching over to work as a defense attorney. So let's just jump right in here. I want to start with James. And we have seen a significant loss in rural defense attorneys in the last 7 years. There's been about 500 that have left the profession or the parts of the state they're working in. New young lawyers aren't moving to rural Texas because they're saddled with educational debt. And what I want to know is, what are the types of lawyers that are practicing in rural Texas, and why are there so few of them?
Sure. Really quickly, our system is set up that in most counties, there are private attorneys who are on a wheel, and the judge is supposed to appoint basically in order based on when somebody applies for a court-appointed lawyer. In some counties across Texas, there are public defender's office. There's mine that covers 5 counties in West Texas in the Big Bend region. And in that case, for example, my office covers about 90% of the felonies that come through. And what we are is we're actually a creature of county government. And so we're county employees, we're public employees working on a salary rather than as a private attorney. And David has worked in that system for a while. They are paid on a voucher. So they're paid by case or by hour, depending on the Indian Defense Plan in the state or in that particular county. The barriers for, I will tell you this, in the counties where I practice, across the 5 counties, I believe there are about 5 lawyers not in my office who are taking court appointments. Across the geographic region that covers about twice the size of the state of Maryland. So there are 5 lawyers that are not in my office that take cases. My first assistant has about $250,000 in student loan debt. If he was not on a salary and was not eligible for public loan repayment after 10 years of service, I would not have him. It is almost impossible right now, I think, for most people coming out of law school to find a way to move to a rural community and sustain that handle that kind of debt, as well as I think the legal desert that is being created across much of rural Texas has put a position where there just aren't, the lawyers aren't coming in and the lawyers are leaving, as you point out, which means that the incentive for a young lawyer to come decreases because they don't have anybody to learn from. They don't want to be the only lawyer around. They don't want to be the only lawyer taking on that stuff and having those incredible financial burdens as well.
Yeah, Lakeisha, do you have any comments on that? Just working in the Panhandle as a newer lawyer up there.
No, my sentiments are the same. It's hard to get individuals up there who want to practice because, like you said, the student loan debt is so high. We're kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's not much for the young lawyers to do. But it is important because a lot of the older attorneys are retiring or aging out, so there's nobody to take their spot. So rural defense is very important in these days to get good attorneys to want to help those who need the help the most.
Yeah, one of the areas that we see this, I think, most commonly play out is in misdemeanor cases. Rural misdemeanor defendants are 4 times more likely to go without counsel than their urban counterparts. And so I guess I'd like to ask all of you, what are the kind of consequences for indigent defendants in rural Texas that are facing misdemeanor charges?
Well, I guess I'll chime in on that. I think one of the things you're seeing there is that it's inconsistent. It depends on where it is. By virtue of indigent defense in Texas being approached after it's been pushed down to the counties to take care of being pushed to the local level, it's created a patchwork of responses and programs and abilities to fund. So it depends on where you are, which is one of the underlying challenges. But it's really one of the biggest challenges I've seen in my 8 years in office. One of the most persistent challenges we've faced, and that's one of the glaring symptoms of it largely not being funded at the state level like many counties are. So I think the inconsistency in misdemeanors in particular from one jurisdiction to the next is one of the challenges that needs to be addressed.
I'll kind of comment on that as well. When I live in Val Verde County and our neighboring county is Kinney County, we see there's a disparity especially on misdemeanor cases. Because in misdemeanor cases, you can walk in and the judge will even tell the defendant, you can go talk to the prosecutor about your case if you want to, instead of trying to get them a court-appointed attorney if they would qualify. And so I'll walk in and I'll see this discussion going on, and I'm saying, don't talk to the prosecutor. Please don't talk to the prosecutor. Ask for a lawyer, please.
Seems like a trap.
Yeah, and so it's ironic, but of course there puts a burden on our prosecutors, and luckily we have very good prosecutors where I practice that are honest and forthcoming, and they take their oath seriously about justice being served, and they'll make sure that if there's an issue that may come up, they'll even tell the defendant, I want you to go ask the judge for an attorney. So that's a very good system that we have in place in our county, and but it does differ jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Yeah, do you think every county in Texas has that same kind of well-meaning prosecutor that's saying, oh, maybe you should?
Not always.
Okay.
No,
All right.
no.
When I moved out to West Texas 5.5 years ago, it was not uncommon for prosecutors to walk over to the jail and meet with inmates and tell them what they needed to do in order to plead and get out of jail. It was not also uncommon, and remains common in some of my counties, for prosecutors to send letters to defendants telling them to come into their offices and work out their cases before they go to court. That has been one of the ongoing battles that I've had since I started the office out in West Texas. And then, of course, William, when the dangers go from obviously not only false convictions, but and issues that are not seen by a non-lawyer, bad stops, bad searches, things like that. But also you have the problems of collateral consequences. And so people don't know that the DWI that they plead to today might set them up for a felony tomorrow. They don't know that the assault family violence charge they have is going to lead them to be restricted to their rights to own or possess a firearm, and that's going to land them in a felony court tomorrow. They don't know any of that because the prosecutor doesn't tell them, because the point in many misdemeanor courts in rural Texas is revenue generation. It is getting people out of jail, having them pay fines, getting convictions. And that, I think, is a real problem across many counties in rural Texas.
So those prosecutors that are going to jails aren't necessarily doing that out of the goodness of their heart.
Some prosecutors, I believe, think that they are doing good for the community, and some are not.
Okay. I guess one of the things that I'm curious about is, is it easier for prosecutors to operate in a criminal justice system when there's kind of this dearth of defense attorneys?
What's the question?
Is it easier for prosecutors to kind of like operate in a criminal justice system when there's not a lot of defense attorneys to kind of serve as that counterweight?
Well, what I've seen in just a brief history between James and I practiced in a county where we're on the wheel. And in 2006, our county decided to go to a public defender system and had a contract with Texas Rural Legal Aid, and that's where I met James when he first started in that office. And I was on the committee with the county of Val Verde to kind of look into it, the contract, and see how we can make it fair for all our defendants in felony and misdemeanor court covering Val Verde County. And, one of the things, there was a pushback, obviously, from the prosecutor's side of things and being able to get things done. And during that context, of course, Michael Morton hadn't been passed yet. And Michael Morton being passed and requiring the state to give us discovery made it a fair system. Because in our jurisdiction, one of our attorneys called us glorified scriveners, because we would have to go down and take notes of everything in the file, in the prosecutor's file. They had an open file policy, which is all the law required at the time, but now it's saved us so much time in doing that and being able to just get the reports, get the videos, any statements, anything that's required in their file, and we get it, and we're able to move on. It's more efficient. And we're thankful for the Michael Morton Act that's been passed.
Yeah, well, I think the efficiency is one huge benefit of public defender offices. In most parts of the state, though, there are not public defender offices. The vast majority of counties in the state still use what's referred to as the wheel system, where private attorneys agree to take indigent defense case at whatever that particular county is able to pay. That's still being done in the majority of counties, but in the majority of counties, that's running into a lot of problems, which have been noted already, how fewer and fewer attorneys are practicing in these rural communities, how those that are practicing are increasingly less willing to take indigent defense cases. And it's created a scenario where in most of rural Texas, indigent defense is a very fragile ecosystem, and we're looking for solutions to that. One of the solutions that counties all across the state are reaching out to is the Texas Indigent Defense Commission that has in many instances in rural Texas kept the wheels from falling off of local jurisdictions and regions. And that's been a lifeline to many, many communities, many jurisdictions. But they have limited funding, limited ability to do an ever increasing amount of work. The line at their door asking for assistance and help is increasing. In Victoria County, we're looking at the concept of partnering with 3 of our neighboring counties to form a regional public defender office. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Taking a step back and looking at the challenges here, I think the biggest focus obviously should be on ensuring our residents' constitutional rights, but also this is a big budget issue. By virtue of this state responsibility being passed down to local counties to fund, that's funded with property taxes, which is a hot topic. And this is a big price tag. In Victoria County, we pay about $1 million a year to private attorneys on the wheel, an amount that increases significantly every year. So it's a problem with it, I think, at the root cause. One of the root causes is a state responsibility, a constitutional right, ensuring that being delegated down to the counties with a mere, as pointed out, 17% funding for that cost. So goodness, I really commend TIDC for doing so much with so little, but I think there's great opportunity there to better fund that organization that helps us on the ground in our local counties.
And I will piggyback off of what Judge just said too about having a regional public defender in his area. Our area, Potter County, is trying to do that same thing in the top part of Texas. There are 19 different counties that don't have a public defender's office up there, and the will is so small of private individuals who do take indigent defense that it's hard for them to go from point A to point B when the driving distance is an hour to 2 hours just to go and talk to their clients. So we are in that process as well as trying to put a regional public defender office up there so we can ensure that the quality of representation for the indigent defense continues to be as great as it is.
Yes, I'd like to take a little time to talk more about these public defender offices because, both James and Lakeisha, you work in these offices. And in the last 5 years or so, the number of counties served by these offices has doubled roughly. And it's still only about 1/3 of Texas's counties have a public defense office there. But one of the things is, I'm curious, I've talked to you all a little bit about this, is how do these public defender offices shape the kind of communities and the criminal justice system in them beyond just having a full-time defense attorney to represent indigent clients? Are there kind of ripple effects that you've seen in your own communities? Yeah. James, Lakeisha, whoever wants to.
Well, y'all have created one already. We're working on it, so go ahead.
There are a couple, I think, positive effects. Number one, I think that there's an education to the community. These are small communities, and the number of people, the population who shows up for jury duty tends to recycle very quickly. And so there's a lot of education when we are having jury trials, which may not have happened very frequently before in some of the communities where I've served. There's some education about the legal system and about individual rights and about the rights to a fair trial that I think have a major effect. Another thing that happened when I opened my office, we were only funded for 3 lawyers and a secretary. I think it was what could get through to my commissioners at the time. But fairly quickly after that, we got funding from TIDC to hire investigator, and then soon after that, social workers. The investigators do a lot of work with families. We don't have social service providers in our communities, and so the investigators are not only investigating cases, but they are also sitting with families and helping them navigate the system and seeing what happens. There's organizations like the Texas Inmate Families Association that is able to get connected to our region because our investigators know them and are working with our families. The social workers in my office were funded with money that was given to TIDC that was targeted for mental health services, mental health support in criminal cases. And we have 2 social workers now that are paid for through TIDC funds. Our mental health services in our counties are woefully inadequate. It is another underfunded part of our social network, our social net in the state, and in our counties it is almost non-existent. Unfortunately, one of the effects of this has been that if you have a significant mental health issue in my counties, you are better off if you commit a crime, because then you get connected to my social workers who then help you navigate the mental health system, help you get on medication, help with compliance, help with your connection to other social services, none of which is available to somebody who's going to our local mental health provider. So we have become, by accident, the major mental health service provider for our 5 counties.
Just because you also have to defend the people who are convicted or charged with crimes.
That's right. And then we get, there's the legal side of it. The cases often get dismissed or better outcomes happen because we are able to develop not only the mental health history, but we also then are working with them with their treatment and with their medication. I've got one social worker who has become fairly regular part of her job where she goes and helps them pick up their medication, because medication compliance is a huge problem. It's a huge barrier for people who are poor for people who are poor in rural communities without transportation, when there's 2 pharmacies in the county, when the mental health service provider does not want to see them, having somebody who can get them through that system helps their case, helps them not reoffend, helps them not stay in the system.
And I'm assuming that's not the main responsibility of the social workers, or
I'm certain that Mr. Burkhart would say that it was not the main purpose of my social workers. The main purpose is to help develop the criminal case and get to better outcomes. But the side effect has been better mental health services for our entire communities.
is this something that you all have seen in your communities as well?
Yes, so our office does have 2 caseworkers as well who focus on the mental health aspect. That population is pretty prevalent in the jail system. So all of our staff is also mental health first aid trained. So we're able to determine kind of if somebody's having a mental health crisis or if they may need further assistance while we're developing their case. So when we're out at the jail for their initial appearance, we're able to let their court-appointed attorney know, okay, this person may have some mental health concerns. You may need to help them with this so they'll understand their case a little bit better. And we've seen a bit bigger outturn of individuals being compliant with their medicine, getting connected to the services they need. And services go beyond the criminal justice system, whether they need help getting their driver's license or housing or things like that. Our caseworkers help them tremendously with all of that.
David, have you seen this as well? I guess-
So one of the things that I saw in the past in my practice is, we were on the wheel system. Public Defender's Office